everyone. It's Alyssa from Colin's Hope and Jessica, and we are here going to answer some questions that have come in around water safety, specifically for your older kids, your preteens, and your teens. This is the message around water safety changes as children age and even for adults. And so we've answered some questions for younger kids, but a lot of people think that we're done talking about water safety because my child has had swim lessons, or they're, outside of that age range of at risk of drowning. But honestly, the risk keeps going up, and for older kids and for even adults, it's just the type of water kind of changes. So I want to introduce, as we start this off, a concept that's called the X effect, and I'm going to show it here, but you can't see it, but I do have a little thing, a big board behind me that I'm going to pull up. And the X effect was something that Dana Gage, who is the founder of the LV Project. She lost her 15-year-old son, Connor, to a lake drowning. And Connor was a lake kid, and he did a flip off of a boat dock, and he wasn't wearing a life jacket and landed badly and went under the water. And sadly, wasn't able to be recovered or resuscitated. So they lost Connor to a drowning in a lake. And so Dana came up with this thing called the X effect. I'm going to do my best at holding this up. And so really what it's saying is that if you read that at the bottom, I'm going to try to get it in the thing. Younger children are at higher risk of drowning in swimming pools, and we added tubs this year to it. So swimming pools, hot tubs, and bathtubs. And older kids are at higher risk of drowning in natural water, so open water. So your lakes, your rivers, your beaches. And that's the water that, if we're talking about older kids, they're probably more likely to have the danger. Certainly, if you have a non-swimmer, then any kind of water, a swimming pool or a hot tub might be a risk too. But for older kids, the natural water we tend to see more drownings there. And it's hard to see, I know, because of this diagram, but the blue in the X is pool water, and the black is lake or open water, which pool water is more clear, or bathtub water is more clear until you get all the bubbles in it. And then the dark water, the lake water, is darker. And so if you see on this, and the dots on there are plotted, at the bottom, this is really hard because it's really big, but at the bottom there's the ages. So the younger children, if you see the younger children, all the dots that are up here in the blue X, those are younger kids ages 1 to 4. So you see that's pools and tubs. And then you move over here and you have the older kids, 13 to 17, up here in yellow, and that's drowned in open water. There are a few outliers. So for example, these were pool drownings of older kids, and you've got certainly some younger kids that drown in open water, but the X effect is basically saying younger kids are at higher risk of drowning in swimming pools and hot tubs, older kids are at higher risk in natural water. And so the questions that we have gotten and that we often see with older kids around water safety relate to open water. And my child's going to go to a party or on a lake or something like that. So Jessica, what's one of the questions that we got that came in around this topic?
Yeah, so one of the questions is, I think what a lot of parents want to know is, what should I be thinking about if my teenager or my younger kid or my older kid wants to go to a party, or maybe they're going to visit some friends on a boat at the lake? What should we think about when our kids are engaging in those kind of activities?
Okay, perfect. Well, I've lived this one because I now have a 15-year-old, and I've lived through the pool parties where there's like tons of kids at a pool party, and I've also lived now through the boat, going out on a boat thing. And I would challenge you as parents and caregivers with your older kids to, one, ask the questions. So if your child's going to a pool party, find out what the supervision is going to be. Are there going to be adults there? Are the adults going to be drinking? Because often, we don't want to have supervision where we have alcohol being mixed in with that, and making sure that there's going to be supervision. First of all, if it's a pool party, what does the setting look like? I know I've made that phone call, and luckily I run a drowning prevention organization. So when I make that phone call to a parent, it's like, hi, this is Alyssa Magrum, and I run Colin's Hope, and my child was invited to your house for a pool party. Are there going to be adults there? What's the supervision going to be like? Are there going to be adults actually watching? Are there going to be lifeguards on duty? A number of pool parties that my daughter has gone to, they've hired lifeguards to be on duty, which is great. And there were adults there. So I would say if your child's going to go to a party, ask the questions just like you would ask around some other safety thing. I know when our kids are younger, we ask questions around play dates, but then we think when they're older, we don't have questions that we need to ask. So for certain, if your older child or preteen or even your teen has gotten invited to a pool party, ask those questions and find out what the supervision is going to be like. Find out about alcohol. Those are some good questions to ask. Similarly, if your child's going out on a boat, first of all, look at what the laws are in your state, but around life jacket usage. But we like to say, anytime you're going on a boat, are there going to be life jackets available? And if not, my child's going to bring their own and send your child. I've sent Ella with a life jacket to go to out on a friend's boat, one that she's comfortable in, one that fits her, one that I know is going to be there. And then having that conversation with parents, but also having the conversation with your children. And that is something that I'm going to challenge each and every parent caregiver to start doing. If you haven't been doing it, is, again, just because your child knows how to swim or they're outside of that at-risk younger child thing, which we typically think about, having these conversations around their own behavior and how they navigate their own self around those situations is huge. And one of the things that often comes up, and I think we got a question about it, is peer pressure. And how do I help my child deal with peer pressure around water? Because we've seen drownings of older kids when we have a child who's not an older teen who's not a strong swimmer, and they're with other teenagers who might be stronger swimmers, and they feel peer pressure to get in water maybe that they're not comfortable in, or to swim across something that they're not comfortable, or to jump off of something. And so just like you would have a conversation with your children about other things like alcohol or drugs or any of the other things that we talk to our kids about, talk about water safety and help them navigate the peer pressure thing. Something that I often send parents who call me or friends who text me and say, my son's going out on a boat, how do I talk to him about this, is I'll send them stories of some of the families that we work with. And if you go to familiesunitedtopreventdrowning.org, there's an electronic version of this book. And I turned right to Connor Gage. So there's Connor Gage. So if you go on familiesunitedtopreventdrowning.org, there are stories of older kids, and I'm turning nicely, this was not planned, to some of the older kids that are in this book. But if you go there, you can have an electronic version of some of the older, of all the kids that are part of Families United to Prevent Drowning, but older kids, and there's stories of kids who've jumped off docks, kids who've jumped off a cliff or a bridge, or swam across something and didn't know their ability or panicked. And there's rip current stories in there. So all the things that you might come up against, you can give your children an example and a face to learn about that. And I share those stories, especially of the older kids, when I do lifeguard in services, because a lot of lifeguards are teens and they're in this age group. And I talk to them about not only doing their job as a lifeguard, but what do they do in their own personal time when they go to the lake, and challenge them. Fishing is another one that I think that if I had an older child teenager who might go fishing, and there's a story in that book of Brandon Fugate who was fishing in a canoe or a kayak with his cousins and wasn't wearing a life jacket, and the storm came up and overturned, and unfortunately lost his life to a drowning because he wasn't wearing a life jacket. So there's some really good stories. I would challenge you again, go to familiesunitedtopreventdrowning.org and look through that deck with slide deck. It's a electronic version with your kids. Have them go to it. I know that there's stories of competitive swimmers that are older in that Families United Stories collection, and it really helps scaffold the conversation when it comes to having a conversation with older kids and teens who think they're invincible. I know I'm raising one of them, and I was one of them. And so I think that gives you, as a parent or caregiver, might give you a place to start the conversation, and then talk to them about different settings. Are they what are they going to do? How you can even role play that conversation. What would happen if you got dared to do something you're not comfortable in? Or what would happen if the other kids on the boat are not wearing a life jacket, but you need to? And so helping them through some of those life decisions, and peer pressure translates to every other thing. I mean, we all have peer pressure in different ways. So use water safety as one of those. Another thing that I think is important, I didn't know about teak surfing, but that's we lost a local teenager a couple of years ago to a drowning after she had been sitting on the back of a boat. She had been wakeboarding and she had a life jacket on, took the life jacket off and was sitting on the back platform of the boat, and carbon monoxide collected at the back of the boat and she passed out and fell in the water and wasn't wearing a life jacket and drowned. And that's something that I never thought of, but it's something for older kids. If you've got kids that are going wakeboarding or wake surfing or out on the lake, throw the conversation of don't sit, on the back of the boat, and don't take your life jacket off. Those are good conversations. What other things?
Can we talk really quickly about camp? So I know that there's probably not going to be as summer camp activity as much this year, but maybe even like I know some of my friends are actually having their own home camps where they're sending their kids to go visit family who live near open water. So if somebody is going to a camp or they're taking that, they're going to be doing those kind of summer camp activities, whether they're a counselor or they're going as a visitor for a camp, what are the kind of questions that parents can be asking the facilitators of those camps?
Sure. Well, I'm, again, your prime participant in this, because when my child was going to a camp, I called the camp and asked, what are your water safety procedures? Is there open water? Are they allowed to go to open water? Do you make them wear life jackets? Are they allowed to bring a life jacket if there are not life jackets there? I wouldn't send my child to a camp that didn't have solid life jacket policies in place. And also, are there lifeguards? Do you have lifeguards on duty? Are they open water certified if they're going into open water? If it's pool, then that's a different thing. But if there's open water, ask those questions. Those are great questions to ask. And then have that conversation with your child too. Hey, you might be going to the river. When you get in the kayak, you should be told to put on a life jacket. If you're not, put one on anyway, and have those conversations. But for sure, I would call the camp or reach out to the camp before I even sent my child there and ask what those water safety policies and procedures are, what type of access kids get to have with the water. Is it pool? Is it open water? What are the policies? I know I love Camp Eagle, which is a Texas camp, because they have a life jacket on the lake policy. It doesn't matter who you are, all their guards are trained in open water. And so I think that's the gold standard. So yeah, ask the questions. And if you want more information on that, send us an email through the website, through the contact form, and we'll try to give you some more, or maybe put together a really good Q&A for camps. Another one that I thought of while you were reading that one, and I'll just answer it because I know we don't have tons of time, but is beach safety. And I know kids might be going on vacation with you as your family, or they may going with a friend. And so we say, go to lifeguarded beaches whenever possible. Pay attention to the flags, the warning flags. We did a whole session on open water safety and beach safety with Chief of the Galveston Beach Patrol, Peter Davis and Kim Tyson. And so that is, lifeguarded beaches know the warning flags. So check the warning flags at each beach, but it's typically green is the surf is okay. Yellow is use caution. Red is there's hazardous conditions. Double red is, and don't get in the water. Double red is very hazardous. And then there's often purple, which is hazardous marine life. But get your kids to know those warning flags, and you as well. And also how to get out of a rip current and how to spot a rip current. And we have some really great information on the Colin Hope website in the open water safety tips around that, and links to the U.S. Surf Lifesaving Association and some other groups that talk about that. Our friends at the Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project, who say flip, float, and follow to get out of a rip current and learn rip current safety. That's a great thing for everybody to know. If you take our water safety quiz, there's also a question about rip current safety in there. But beaches and open water are, waves, where there's waves and rip currents, is a whole nother thing. And your kids might be driving to the beach themselves without adults. And so knowing that, hey, you learn to swim or you're in a pool, it's very different when you go to the lake or to the beach and the open water. And so having those conversations, I think, is really, really important, especially as you get into these age groups where kids are driving, they're driving with friends, they're going on vacations with friends, and there may be places where you're not, where you may not be. And it's a difficult thing. And I know one last thing, because I know we're running out of time, but I've gotten the question before, and I know I struggled with this actually as a parent, when my daughter got old enough to go to, say, a city pool without an adult. There's different rules and ages at different, check your local ones, but I struggle with that. Well, the pool says she's 10 and she could go to a pool by herself. Well, to me, that wasn't an okay age. I wasn't comfortable sending her to a pool when she was 10 without an adult with her, other than if it's lifeguarded or not. But then when she got to be 13, for me, I talked through that and we talked about it and what was the decisions. Again, some of that is your parental decision, and some of it's your child's maturity and their swimming ability and who they're with, and are there lifeguards on duty and all of that stuff. But these are very real things. So to wrap this up, I'm just going to challenge you as parents or caregivers, or if you're watching this and you're a teen, no one is drown proof. I do not care what your age, your race, your socioeconomic status, your swimming ability. No one's drown proof. So even as adults, we need to be modeling this good water safety behavior for our kids, even when they're preteens or teens, whether that's on the boat, whether that's on the lake or at the beach. We need to be modeling safer behaviors, and we need to be talking about it. So coming up with water safety rules, just like we do everything else. We talk about that with younger kids, but let's have those water safety rules with our older kids as well. And Dana Gage, who the founder of the LV Project, and Connor's mom, says life jackets on lakes like seatbelts in cars. And so, adults, wear those life jackets too. Don't just tell your teens or your preteens to wear them, or your kids, and then not wearing them. So those are just a few of the questions that we've got about preteen, older kids, and teen water safety. We'd love to continue to answer your questions. And so I think if you send us an email or a message through our website, we will try to address them. We're happy to do some broadcasts in the future around whatever it is that you're interested in. So those are the hot topics for the older kids. And with that, we will say have the best day ever, and we will see you later.